The main events of the week were the parliamentary elections in France and Britain. And if in France there is still intrigue about whether the right will be able to get an absolute majority, then in Britain Labour is celebrating a resounding victory, and Prime Minister Sunak has already announced his resignation. He also congratulated Labour Party leader Keir Starmer on his victory and noted that the transfer of power will take place in a peaceful and orderly manner, with goodwill on all sides. This should give us all confidence in the stability and future of our country, Sunak said. Now King Charles III must task Labour leader Keir Starmer to lead and form a government. Labour's victory will not change Britain's policy towards Ukraine, which will continue to be helped in the war for its independence. By the way, the leader of the French right, Marine Le Pen, was publicly outraged that the racist foreign ministry published her photo on its website. She hastened to distance herself from ties with Moscow and stated that she condemns this Russian provocation. And at the SCO summit in Astana, they were even afraid to touch Putin again. He is so toxic. Negotiations with Erdogan ended in nothing, and even the planned visit to Ankara was again postponed indefinitely. The summit in Astana was missed by Indian Prime Minister Modi, who plans to arrive in Moscow on July 8. Perhaps he will bring the bald man the latest plan of action to end the war. But this plan is unlikely to be adopted. Putin wants to end the war in Ukraine only on his own terms, territory in exchange for a ceasefire. With the words, "agree now," then the conditions will be tougher. It is not clear what this threat is based on. Even despite the help of Pyongyang, the occupying army is poorly armed, not to mention the quality of meat. Kyiv and its allies have already sent Putin to hell along with his initiatives, and the toad of the world, Orban, who arrived on a visit, was sent there after the bald one. And while the Kremlin is waiting for Trump's second coming to the White House, the cave itself is beginning to crumble. The number of countries falling off the list of schematizers is increasing. This week, Chinese banks ran away from the sanctioned Moscow exchange in friendly ranks. Nabiullina is trembling. The departure of the yuan from the cave could cause a serious blow to Putinamika. The head of VTB, Kostin, whines that now for each new cash transaction he has to come up with a unique scheme that works only once. The West is destroying the schemata, and the Iskanders no longer laugh at the benefits of sanctions. The system is categorically made to understand that, while the fat man dries, the thin man will die, and the role of the thin man is precisely the cave that has been conquered. She is offered to either end the war now, or suffer the humiliation of losing Crimea. First, they will iron it out with ATACMS missiles, then they will splash down the Crimean bridge, then they will destroy the logistics chains of the invaders, leaving them without supplies and posing the threat of a blockade. They will either have to give up or swim to Novorossiysk, which is already shaking from regular flooding. And already in such conditions the system will have to decide. Does it want to continue arguing with the decision of the West, or is it much easier to make an offer to the dictator that he cannot refuse? Ball suspects something, and is already tightening the law on state security, prohibiting FSO officers and members of their families, including minor children, from communicating with foreigners. The slightest step to the side and you are fired. At Putin's request, the State Duma adopted a law allowing the deprivation of mandates of parliamentarians who traveled abroad without the consent of the leadership of the chambers of parliament. The rat is afraid that the system will not want to die in an embrace with it, because if there is a threat of losing Crimea, it intends to use the last nuclear argument. Glubinariev is already warming up on this topic by publishing the results of a Levada Center survey, in which a third of the population supports the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The pattern of screaming so hard that everyone craps and crawls away is already taking over the skull of the hegemons. The word is up to the system itself. Either it will tear off the head of a vigorous rat, or it will die along with it. The only question is, where can we get enough money to disarm the swamp dump after the collapse of the system without the risk of man-made disasters, the consequences of which could cost humanity more than the victory itself? The cave is not reformable. Because you can't reform shit. It can only be buried as fertilizer. And then, after some time, something may grow in this place. But it's impossible to bury shit in a swamp. It will just float in it. This means the swamp needs to be drained. And who needs it? Who will bear the risks and costs? The circle is closed. No answer.